thank you for this kind introduction, and in reciprocity I can say that I respect very much your activity, very professional job of Dragon Capital. I met in this, I don't know, in this room, I guess, how many years ago? 4 years ago? 2 years ago. And I remember that it was discussion with Prime Minister Azarov, and we bet that Ukraine will be part of European Union sooner, as we discuss now. But I'm very glad that we can speak still about the future European perspective, European future of Ukraine, because the situation is quite complicated. I would like to give you some general remarks, and then I'm ready to answer your questions, because I don't know what kind of details you want to know about our mission and our activities here, but because you need some strategic guidelines, and I would like to give you my very personal opinion about the situation. And first I want to start with such a remark that everything what is going now, 2012 last year and 2013 this year, is much more difficult as the situation which we observed some years ago. Why I'm speaking about it? Because still I have such very deep feeling that Ukraine is a place where political elites they have a tendency to waste time, to waste good opportunities, to waste these possibilities which are creating in not very long period, but in some short terms, but it's necessary actively to use these possibilities, these opportunities for development, for some fulfillment of the goals. Today the situation is complicated, first of all, because we have a lot of difficulties inside European Union. Of course, I would like to say, and I'm absolutely sure that European Union will exist, will survive, and all these experts who are speaking about collapse of European Union are wrong. But of course, the situation is not easy, because we have some good signals of better of Europe, which is ready to overcome the crisis. But we have some problems, and statement of Mr. Cameron and decision to organize referendum in the UK is of course one of the elements of this new complexity of the situation. Or the last election, last day, yesterday, no, 2 days ago in Italy, it shows that the situation in Europe during the crisis or even after the crisis is quite dangerous, because we have really increasing position of populistic movements, of nationalistic groups, we have what is quite natural, we have more frustration and less hopes concerning good future of our continent. But nevertheless, it's necessary to understand that EU will survive, and EU has a good future, because that is one of the most successful political projects in the history of the world, of humanity. And I'm sure that even if we speak about all these troubles which Europe has, is necessary to show some positive elements in what is much more concerning Ukraine. The last declaration of Madam Merkel, that is necessary to start the next stage or next chapter in in negotiations with Turkey, means that European Union realized that for good future we need two elements. We need deeper integration, what means stronger European institution. That's one of the elements of this deeper integration is fiscal pact. I think development of Eurozone, including Poland, which will decide, I think, this question next years. And this deeper integration means, of course, some, long-term idea to organize EU as kind of federation. But federation is not a question for today. It's not a question even for next years. But if you want to see some strategy, I think that is really the final goal of this integration next decades. But that was first positive element, and that integration is the first element important element for the future of European Union. And the second one is further enlargement not which we understand as only new members of European Union, but new countries which are associated with the EU, or they have some kind of strategic partnership with the European Union. And of course, on the list of, let's say, enlargement, which is not a very popular description today, but in my opinion is absolutely necessary element for good future of European Union, we have two most important countries. The first is Turkey. I mentioned the declaration of Merkel is really very significant and can open this can accelerate this important process with, of association with Turkey. And the second is Ukraine. And in my opinion, despite all troubles, all these misunderstandings and really mistakes which were done last years by Ukrainian authority, the result of last summit in Brussels is quite positive, because it shows what Minister said just now, that we can have some roadmap and we have a very clear goal. That is an association agreement signed during Vilnius summit of Eastern Partnership. But I would like to say that that is November. Now we have March. Soon, and it means that we have a quite limited time to do everything what is necessary to do. I will say some words about these duties now. So the first point, Europe. Europe, in my opinion, of course, with all these problems inside European Union, is today quite open for association with Ukraine, and I think that is really good news. And in my opinion, this strategy is decided, but the situation is quite fragile, and that is what Ukraine should know. The people are in Europe tired, a little bit even exhausted discussing problems of Ukraine, but still we have a good base to fulfill this goal. It means association agreement November this year. The second important point is Russia, of course, and I think that is something what really is a strategic question for Ukrainians, for Ukrainian government, and for all of us. Because we know that Europe is open, and it's not true that Europe is not interested about Ukraine. I have heard many times, even my good friends here in Ukraine, they don't believe that Europe is interested seriously about Ukraine. I can tell you, yes, Europe is seriously interested about Ukraine and about the association agreement. But of course, it's necessary to say that Russia is extremely interested about Ukraine and the future of this country. Because, in my opinion, the strategy of Russian Federation, is absolutely clear and very strong, and they try to fulfill this strategy with highest determination. Of course, that's its creation, so-called Euro-Asian Union, today, which would be based on today's custom union, 3 countries, Russia, Belarus, Kazakhstan. But really, in this concept of Mr. Putin, this re-establishment of Russia or this country as a superpower, this Euro-Asian Union looks like a most important strategic point, and in my opinion that is his very personal ambition. And of course that is easy to understand, because this custom union plus Ukraine, so this new Euro-Asian Union, that is something very strong and with own weight. Without Ukraine, that is of course still quite interesting and big organization, but not so powerful as together with Ukraine. So we have very clear strategy from Russian side, and it means that next months and years is quite natural that we will see a lot of pressure, a lot of elements in Russian politics concerning Ukraine, with the idea to take Ukrainians to custom union and then to Euro-Asian Union. Of course, Russia has a lot of instruments. That is soft politics methods, hard politics methods, a lot of historical arguments, tradition, etc., etc. But that is a point which I would like to underline. Russia has own strategy, and that's a strategy which is very determined. And now the Ukraine, and I think Ukraine, I respect all these reforms, everything what happened here last years is necessary, and I agree with the minister who said that this team is a team of pragmatic people. That's okay, and we had some proof of that, because association agreement, which was discussed quite a long time in the first months of new government and Mr. Azarov's government, was the procedure were speed up, and finally association agreement was initialed in March last year. But in this strategic framework, I see the real problem, which is necessary to discuss openly here in Ukraine. Because one thing is absolutely obvious for me, that in this geographical location, with this tradition, with this kind of ties, not only economical ties, but social ties, cultural ties with Russia, the best politics for Ukraine is, of course, to keep some kind of balance between Russia and Western Europe. But if, on this very general level, that is easy to understand, and everybody who would be the president of Ukraine probably will make such politics, it's necessary to say that it's very difficult to be, it's totally impossible to be a member of custom union and associated member of European Union. That is even more complicated, because some people here in Ukraine, they are thinking that it's possible to be, let's say, in 30% part of custom union and in 70% part of European Union, and only what we can negotiate is this number of percentage, this 25, 35, so on. And that is absolutely, it would be nice, but it is impossible also. This decision is crucial, it's really strategic one. And of course, what I want to underline again, being associated with the European Union doesn't mean that you will stop your relationships with Russia. And of course, that is very important for Russians to understand that, and very long time, Russian authority, even Mr. Putin, President Putin, or Prime Minister Putin, gave such statements that Russia has nothing against European ambitions of Ukraine, even to associate with the European Union. Only one really point which is unacceptable for Russia is NATO membership of Ukraine. And it happened. Today nobody speaks about NATO membership of Ukraine. The question is, if not decided, that is at least frozen. But we speak now about association with the European Union. And in this case it's necessary to say, having good relationship with Russia, and Russia should understand it, Ukraine, if is decided, should be associated with European Union with all consequences of this fact. What means all these consequences? Of course, it means reforms, which partly are decided. And of course, I think the document is on the table, and we have a really good chance to sign this document in November. But we have a lot of problems which are still unsolved, and the problems which create a lot of not fears, but some expectations on the European side, and in the relationships between Ukraine and EU, a lot of misunderstandings and confusion. The first is, of course, judiciary, because that is not sensation for our Ukrainian friends if I will say that this judiciary still is not in European style at all. I'm with what Thomas mentioned, with President Cox. We are special envoy of European Parliament to monitor the question of so-called political prisoners, Tymoshenko, Lutsenko, Ivashchenko. We spent a lot of hours in Ukrainian courts. We met prosecutors, and of course our not only feeling but very serious observation is that is a crucial element of reforms which Ukraine need, because please understand me, that is not very diplomatic what I will say here now, but still, if you see judiciary in Ukraine, that is much more in Soviet style as European style. And I understand absolutely the problem, how is complicated and needs time, of course, needs probably the exchange of generations in this system. But in my opinion, this question of reforms of judiciary, it means not only to prepare new criminal code or new procedural criminal code. It doesn't mean that we will happy because you will change the role of prosecutors or prosecutor office. It's necessary not only to prepare all these changes, all these reforms, but it's necessary to implement these reforms. And it takes a lot of efforts, and it should be really fulfilled with much bigger determination as we observed last months. The next point, which is an element of this is one of criteria before signing of association agreement, is the question of election and electoral law. Because that is really bad if the reaction of a very prestigious international organization, independent organization in the world after last election, 2012, was quite clear that this election was worse as the last election. So we cannot speak about progress. We speak about some step back in the procedure. So I think everything what can be all this opinion offered by international organization is necessary to accept. And of course it's not easy because electoral law is a very political one, and it's necessary to find some understanding from the opposition. But the reforms of electoral law are important also. Third point is a program of all these reforms which are connected with association. But I think if we heard very promising words of Minister, and if Ukraine really will decided to fulfill everything what they promised during last summit in Brussels, it would be good. But the problem here, not only here, this is a problem of politics everywhere, but here maybe even more, that is so easy to promise and is so difficult to implement. So that now we need not only good promises, but we need really some very decisive elements of implementation. We need really arguments. We need evidence, and this evidence is absolutely decisive for the future. The last point, because I have only 15 minutes, Thomas decided, and I'm a very disciplined man. The last point, what maybe is interesting for you, is the question of our mission and the situation of Madam Tymoshenko and Mr. Lutsenko. Well, that is, in my opinion, politically, this is one of the most important signals for European Union that the government, the authority here, really is ready to do something. Of course, I understand the situation is extremely complicated because in all these cases we have at least 3 levels of complicities. The first level is legal one, because legally, for example, Madam Tymoshenko is sentenced, and today, of course, everything what we can do should be decided on the legal way. That is this legal. It's the same with Mr. Lutsenko. He is sentenced. He is in the prison, and it's difficult to change the situation without such legal moves. The second level, which is quite complicated also, is political one, because of course this. The role of politics in all these cases is quite obvious. Of course, we can say that the evidence against sentenced people was good or enough good to do it, but this political element, the political arguments are existing in this two cases, and of course that is the strong complicity, because we have the fight between government and opposition quite tough here in Ukraine, and that is why to find the solution is not so easy. And the third element, which is maybe the most difficult in these cases, is psychology. Because all these people, they even in some period of the history, they were working together. They know each other. That is something what sometimes is difficult to understand without this psychological analysis, and of course that complicates the situation even more. But I think that in Yulia Tymoshenko case, we should wait for, first of all, it's necessary to continue all these medical treatments which are provided by German doctors. We have new information from Charity Clinic that these treatments is impossible to finish. She needs more. It means that she should stay in Kharkiv hospital. And of course, she is waiting for decision of Strasbourg court. And I think next month we'll have a decision of Strasbourg Human Rights Court. And of course, and that is promised by President Yanukovych during the summit, Ukraine should respect decision of Strasbourg court in 100%. So we'll see. Of course, Strasbourg court is totally independent, and it's even difficult to predict what kind of decision we should expect. But I think this obligation of Ukrainian government to fulfill decisions of Strasbourg is very important, and is one of elements of confidence between EU and Ukraine. Of course, we have new cases. We have new accusations against Madam Tymoshenko. In my opinion, that is, even if it's legally understandable, politically, I think is a mistake. Because if we speak about some accusations in the case of Sherman, it means the situation happened in the year 96. So to start to open new case after 70 years, 10 months before Vilnius, before association agreement, politically, I think that looks like a, own goal. How to say this is something what. I was president 10 years, and of course our judiciary is much more European in Poland as in other countries, but of course politically even the judges understand sometimes, or the prosecutors understand sometimes, that something is possible to do now and something is possible to do a little bit later. But in my opinion, today with Madam Tymoshenko, is necessary to help her in sense of her health and the situation in the hospital, and not to complicate her situation more as it is now. With Mr. Lutsenko, we, Cox and myself, we appealed to the President Yanukovych to use this right of pardon. And after 50% of time of the sentence which Lutsenko spent in the prison, to solve this problem, especially because the case is, frankly speaking, not extremely serious. That is, I don't speak about details. If you are interested, I can answer. But it would be the nice gesture. It would be a good gesture to show that we have some progress in this situation. What will happen, we'll see. But in my opinion, and that is my message to Ukrainian authority, you cannot underestimate these cases, because even if the politicians today in Europe, they understand much better as 1 or 2 years ago, the situation is not black-white, and they have much more moderate approach to the question of Tymoshenko or Lutsenko, that with association agreement, after signing, we have to go to the European Parliament, and in the European in the European Parliament, it would be very difficult to explain to the political groups and to members of the European Parliament that without solution in these two cases, accepting, of course, all these legal limits, all these legal complicities, we can expect ratification of the agreement. So we will work further, Cox and myself. We should inform the European Parliament next 2 months about the progress in our mission. And frankly speaking, if we will have no progress in our mission, our situation, I mean, the situation of our mission will be dramatically difficult. And I expect absolutely that the European Parliament can withdraw our mission. And then Ukraine can have a very negative opinion and very critical report from our side. So that please, if and I'm sure that Ukrainian authority, they hear us from this hall. That is necessary to know that these two cases is possible to solve, and I think it's time to do it, because if not, we can have a situation more difficult and more complicated in the future. So finally, 3 elements which I want to repeat again. European Union will exist, and that is a good scenario for Ukrainians to be part in association forum or in other forms this organization, and I'm sure still that majority of Ukrainians are extremely interested to be part of this European club. Secondly, we have to understand and to see very active, very determined politics from Russian side, what is of course one of element of this picture. And third one, Ukraine today, Ukrainian government, Ukrainian authority has very clear goal. That is to sign association agreement November 2013, and I wish to Ukrainians to reach this goal. And of course, it needs a lot of decisions and efforts, but I think that is a historical chance. In my opinion, that is really last sentence. In my opinion, association agreement for Ukraine can be, to some extent, very similar to the referendum of independence 91. Frankly speaking, nobody expected that the result of this referendum will be so visible, so spectacular in favor of independence. I met several times Gorbachev, and we discussed this issue. Gorbachev was sure the result will be 52, 53 to stay with Russia in this new concept of CIS, and no more as 47% for independence. If you remember, the result was 81 or 82% for independence, and really everything after this referendum changed. And today we can say that, of course, with a lot of problems, but what concerns independence, sovereignty, and own identity of Ukrainians, this 20 years is really a great time. That is something what happened, and in my opinion, is irreversible. And many people in the world, they don't understand that Ukraine is really so independent and so sovereign and so different as Russia or Belarus, for example, or Kazakhstan country in the world. So this, and it was not only as a result of the referendum, it was a change of the thinking, of the mentality of the people of the nation. And in my opinion, this association agreement, November this year, can be, to some extent, very similar breakthrough, to similar element of change, of thinking, of perspective, of understanding the future, the possibilities of this country. It will really organize and reorganize mentality of people, and maybe that is a very optimistic opinion from my side, but knowing Ukraine quite well, not so well as Thomas Fiala, but still not bad, I'm sure that this association agreement can play so important historical role, and that would be good to use this opportunity and not to waste again this time and this chance which Ukraine has.